Hey guys, good evening. We are Dog Sports Live, and we have a guest today, Sarah from UGA Twitter. I'm sure that most everyone knows Sarah from Twitter. If you don't, please follow her. Graham Coffey, my co-host, who is working the college football expansion and realignment beat hardcore. Graham, where are we right now before we get into our show on Georgia's defense?
So right now, I put an article out hour, 2 hours ago that I basically was able to talk to some high level Texas sources, and they are going to do everything they can to play football in the SEC in 2022. If for some reason that doesn't happen, then you might see 2023, but they're definitely not going to wait until 2025 when the Big 12 contracts are up. So they are looking at the potential of a hefty buyout, but I also think the reason that they're floating stuff like that out in public is to try and maybe create a little bit of pressure on other conference mates so that they start looking for new homes, and the Big 12 maybe just kind of dissolves organically and they're able to save themselves some money. So lots of speculation on the buyout side of things.
Bob Bowlesby put all their shit on the lawn when they got home.
Possibly.
I think it's going to be weird, like you say, to play out that contract and those media rights, and just get it over with. We've been ripping off a lot of Band-Aids with football expansion, so this is just one more Band-Aid, and there'll probably be more to come.
Yeah, I mean, the chairman of the Board of Regents for the UT system is a guy named Kevin Eltfe. And he is a big Longhorns football fan. And I think he wants to see this happen and happen quickly. And he has access to a lot of big money people that can pitch in and make it happen if they have to pay a buyout. But honestly, man, I think that it would not be outside the realm of reason to say that a high school quarterback in the form of Arch Manning may be at least having some small percentage of the reason for why this ball is rolling as quickly as they want it to, just because I think if they can get into the SEC in time for him to come on campus, that they can bring him in. Obviously, that's 3% of a huge, bigger conversation, but it's still kind of crazy to think about.
Graham, do you think Texas thinks that they're going to have the same kind of sway in the SEC, or are they ready to shit in their own hand a little bit with that?
Yeah, I think they're ready to fall in line. I mean, they're not, they're going to fold the Longhorn Network. That was something we reported back on last week when this was all coming out. I don't think they're going to come in and ask for unequal share of revenue like they have in the Big 12 in the past. I think they'll be one of 16 teams, and their revenue will reflect that, and so will Oklahoma's, and so will Vanderbilt's for that matter.
All right, I have one last question on this, what you guys think, because I've been asked this, and I don't know what my opinion is. What do you think in terms of if they both join next year, would you rather have pods? Would you rather have the divisions? And if we have the divisions, would you rather have Alabama and Auburn? How would that look?
Go ahead, Josh.
I mean, I don't really have an opinion either, but I guess my instinct would be divisions cause a lot of problems. I like the idea of having a pod system, and then you play another pod, and then you rotate around. So your every year schedule is smaller, therefore you can rotate in around the conference more. And I think there's potentially to give it a lot more of the original SEC vibe about that. So I mean, I guess if it's a coin flip, I would say pods make the most sense. So I think that's where we're going, and I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I think pods would be more fun personally. I mean, Missouri's first league game was against Georgia in Columbia back in 2012, and we've still yet to see UGA play in College Station against Texas A&M. So, I think the appeal of playing everybody once every 4 years or so is something that would be a lot of excitement around.
I know, and then pretty soon we'll have FSU will be in the league, and so will
Clemson, and who knows?
Who knows where it's going to. All right, so tonight we're talking about defense and sort of the evolution of the defense in college football, and specifically under Kirby Smart as a DC at Alabama, and also as a head coach at Georgia. I'm going to tease that evolution word because our friend Greg Pullover Bowling Illustrated takes issues with the evolution, that it was more of a crash course on the RPO. So let's get into it. Both of you got the reason we're talking about this. Graham wrote a really great lengthy piece on Dog Sports concerning and about a coaching clinic that miraculously was available to public on YouTube. And Sarah actually had watched it too and had some thoughts on Twitter. And so let's kick it off, guys. I'm going to roll this Ohio State 2014, and you guys can give some context to that.
Yeah. So, what we're talking about here is when Kirby Smart was at Alabama, other than 2007, Saban's first year at Alabama, their defense ranked in the top 10 every year from 08 through 2013 in total defense, rush defense, and passing defense. All of a sudden, 2014, they fall out of the top 10 in total defense. They're, I believe, 58th in passing defense. And so they stopped and asked, what's going on here? The game where that became most evident that there was a problem was this one that Josh is showing right now against Ohio State, which is the 2014 Sugar Bowl, which was also the first college football playoff semifinal. And Ohio State ended up putting up 45 points on Bama, if I'm not mistaken. Basically, if you look at what happened here, college football had changed dramatically from when Nick Saban and Kirby Smart came to Alabama to the mid-2010s. You had a league in the late 2000s where everyone was running I formation. Almost everyone still had a fullback on the field. Big linebackers, brute force was what you wanted on the defensive side of the ball. You wanted big guys clogging lanes. All of a sudden, spread offenses start coming into the league. And this Ohio State game in particular, they knew they couldn't run straight up the gut at Bama. They knew that Bama was too big up front. So they did a lot of runs outside. They rolled the pocket like you see here. They tried to take advantage of speed, and they tried to make sure that Alabama's size was a disadvantage for them. And eventually in the fourth quarter, they wear them down. Ezekiel Elliott starts busting big runs, so on and so forth. So, I mean, I think that's the big thing is, speed, screens, lateral quickness. How do you defend against that when your defense is, you've got 260-pound linebackers and you have 330-pound D linemen all across the front. What do you want to add in on that, Sarah? I know you have some thoughts.
Yeah. So the main thing that I thought was really interesting about this clinic, which if it's on YouTube, if anybody wants to watch it, I think it's just also good to just hear Kirby shoot the shit about stuff. That's hilarious.
It's nice, isn't it?
Yes. I don't think he knew it was going to be recorded based on just what he was saying. And one quick aside, which I did tweet about, is really funny. He talks about going to the combine, and Belichick just told him that he wants linemen with big asses. Like, that's all he's looking for. So Belichick is a confirmed ass man, and I think that's really take away from this coaching clinic. But on the defensive side of the ball, more than just Belichick being an ass man is so, and this is sort of what Graham was alluding to with the fact with the size, right? Everybody knows, especially 2009 Alabama, that era. They were going to beat you with how they recruited, right? They had monsters on the field. You weren't going to come out with a guy that was bigger than Mount Cody. He'd be dead. So Ohio State said, well, screw it. We'll go around you. We're not going to try to figure out how to block you. We're not going to spend hours trying to figure out how to beat him man to man. We're just going to go around him and spread you out. And I know we're going to get into this, but that really changed in terms of with the linebackers. When you have a spread offense, which Kirby was not used to, right? When you have a gap that way, you're asking a linebacker to not only block a guard, but you've also got to have him block Alvin Kamara. So what size linebacker do you put out there? Do you put Roquan to a Roquan size guard to block, a Roquan size linebacker to block a guard? Or do you put him out there to, that runs a 4.5 to get Alvin Kamara? So they realized that, like Graham was, like you were saying, that they could use the size to the advantage in the fact that you're going to have to pick one or the other if you set it up this way. And so they just absolutely exploited that in terms of them being able to have the guys that they did. And so it's kind of ironic because you think of like these huge Alabama players and back in old SEC football, having these players that were just monsters that were massive, which is still true. But even in the NFL, they're making smaller linemen. That was like, oh, you have the team. You're off the bus. Like, clearly you're going to win. But now that's changing where it's like, okay, we're going to use your size, like you're saying, against you because now you have to choose like which type of player to be able to block. And I know you might get into this, but what I thought was interesting with that video or with what he was talking about, which I didn't really, believe it or not, I have not coached college football, despite many rumors on the internet. I have not. So I thought it was interesting that that Kirby was like, all right, so we absolutely got our asses handed to us in this championship game. What are we going to do about it? And he straight up just went to the guy who handed it to him. He went to Tom Herman because Tom Herman left after from Ohio State, got the job, and went to him and was like, hey, went to Houston and was like, hey, what did we do? And basically Herman laid that out for you. He's like, we saw your weakness. We realized what we could do. You guys weren't going to be able to run sideline to sideline. You couldn't go lateral on us. So we just wore you out. And I didn't really, honestly, I mean, maybe that's just me, but I didn't really know that they're willing to be that open and like go and talk and like tell me like why I was terrible at my game, which, as I'm a huge Kirby defender, many people know, I go to bat for the old Kirby Smart. I think is interesting because he gets a lot of, which I know is the whole point of this, and we'll go more into it, but he gets a lot of crap for not being innovative or playing old football. And it's the first time he really got routed. He immediately was like, so I'm doing something wrong. I need to change what I'm doing. I need to revamp. And I thought that was interesting. He wasn't a guy who took the ego and was like, this is the way we do it. This is the way we block in the SEC. Like, old man football or whatever. He immediately was like, okay, this is what he saw in 2014. This is what football is going to be before it really was everywhere, and was like, redo this. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think, I don't know if you have that graphic or not, Josh, of the weight comparisons between Cody and Atkins and Hightower and Roquan, but like, Alabama's 2009 defense, you have Terrence Cody up front. He's 6'3", 354 pounds. Georgia's defense in 2017, that main zero technique tackle, that kind of nose guard position is 6'4", 308. Yeah. So, I mean, you're talking about significant drops. And the reason that, as you brought up, with Belichick liking big butts and not lying about it, the reason why is because you can take 3 down linemen, and if you line them up properly, you can use those big butts basically for linebackers to work off of, and those guys can get in the hole and they can shade. And especially with these spread offenses, the thing that if you think about Oregon back in the Chip Kelly days, think about some of the Dan Mullen offenses you've seen, think about West Virginia under Rich Rodriguez. A lot of those offenses are predicated on that zone read kind of option play where the quarterback can hand it off or keep it. And now, also he can throw it as well. Gus Malzahn's Auburn team, same story, right? And so what's that?
I said offensive juggernaut, Gus Malzahn.
Yeah. Well, for a year, right? And so basically all those plays in those spread offenses, they happen in the B gap, which is just football jargon for the hole that is in between the offensive guard and the offensive tackle. So when you have those guys lined up properly and they're a little bit quicker, all of a sudden, instead of having your inside linebackers taking on the guards, you have your defensive ends and defensive tackles occupying 2 guys at once. And that's allowing your linebackers to come, work off of them, get into the holes, crash, create problems. Those spread offenses, especially like those run heavy ones, if they can't run that zone read play and gash you for 5 yards off that B gap, then nothing else really works because all the fakes and stuff are predicated off of that one play. So, I mean, that's kind of one of the things that's convenient about this. And I think the other thing that is worth noting is just the size of these defensive ends that Georgia has now, or defensive tackles. Think about like a Jalen Carter who's athletic enough to go and catch a touchdown pass and line up at fullback. That guy can get out on a screen play and get to the sideline and help make a tackle. And back in 2009, the guys on the defensive front for Alabama and for Georgia too, for that matter, were too big to go out and try and play in space sideline to sideline and defend those spread players. At the same time, go ahead, yeah.
And when we were talking about doing the show, I just kind of like did my nerd thing where I scraped some data and stuff. And the 2013 and 2012 off defensive line under Rick were 325 average weight, and and you can see now they're down under 300 as an average as a group. So I mean, you can tell that they completely changed on how they maybe not recruit them, but how they train them and keep them to a certain weight. And Sarah, you made some notes about maybe it was a different thread, but you talked about how much better the Georgia defense played in the second half of the Rose Bowl, and them running some of those plays. And it's got that Roquan Smith player that's key to this defense, I would think. Yeah.
So I normally for like self-care, I watch the second half of the Rose Bowl like 3 times a week. So it's fine.
You're not alone.
Yeah. So obviously we went for more. If you look at it sort of at an objective level, you're like, hey, we win zone, we win the second half. They say, we were playing, pure man. But the thing about like the way that we do with men is it's actually not pure man. You have a guy who's a man free, because what they do, because like he's saying, we can block. And I don't have the exact play, but if you go back through, when we're in a 3-man front, we're in a 3-down front, we have an extra player. So it looks like that's a 4-down front, but it's really a 3-down front, and we have an extra guy. And so one part of that is, saying that people don't get it. I know I understand why people don't really get it with saying how does stopping the run, how is that important in a spread offense? If you think spread, you think pass, you think gutting. And if you look and if you watch the Oklahoma game, we've gotten way better at it. And part of it is the players, and part of it is and Kirby talks about that in other videos about how he's changed his technique with that. But anyway, if you do watch the Rose Bowl, you'll see that. What Graham was just saying, in that the way we play is we can commit when we have those guys those defensive linemen. And really quick, MINT is what the offense stands for. I don't know if we've gotten to that part yet, but it does stand for, there's actually an abbreviation for that. And that's because the linemen are blocking inside, right? They're going to pull those guys inside. And when you do that, you can block with less guys. And so, sorry, I'm just keeping you on your toes, Josh.
Trust me, this is going particularly well for me. So, yeah. Pretty low rent production value we have here. Continue.
Yes. So what that actually stands for is, I have it right here, is interior. So when they call interior is the last part, and then the DBs is match. So that's what it stands for, match, and then interior. And that's basically what you see in the Oklahoma game as well, right? So we clogged up the run in a basic way of saying it. We clogged up the run with less guys on the line. And so then, of course, like Graham was saying, we have more guys to commit to the pass. And then we also have the guys, especially in the Oklahoma game, when you have that can run sideline to sideline. They kept doing what they had tried to do in the first half and run us cut to the outside. That super helped us in overtime. That they kept running to the outside and they couldn't catch us because we had that extra guy when we could, and they knew they couldn't gut us up the middle anymore.
I'm running some of the Peach Bowl plays too, so if you guys see something, you can stop me and rock through them too.
Yeah, so right here you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys up near the line of scrimmage. All of a sudden you have a shift. You've got that linebacker that's standing up. He looks like he's going to blitz. He backs off. All of a sudden you have a Adam Anderson come in, who's kind of lined up in a star position. It's just basically you can bunch up, and what Georgia will do, and it's very confusing for a quarterback, very confusing for an O lineman, is they will bring 5, 6 guys up to the line of scrimmage, and maybe only 3 of those guys are actually going to go after the quarterback. And I think the other thing with a Cincinnati game, right, you had an athletic quarterback like Ritter, and one of those Rose Bowl plays you showed, Mayfield was scrambling around and Roquan makes a tackle. So in this defense, Georgia basically always has a guy his job is to spy on that quarterback. And that was often Roquan in 2017. And the reason that Roquan was so good was as soon as that quarterback moves off his spot and the defensive line is able to get him moving, then that spy can take off. He can drop into coverage. He can do a lot of different things. And you also, if you'll show in a second, Josh, that little odd mirror 5 diagram that you had up a minute ago. Right here. Yeah.
Right there.
So if you look here, you've always got one guy.
I love the clip art.
I know, right? Yeah, that was probably like Glenn Schumann that did that. You've always
there was some intern who got that on a Friday and was like, "We're going to do this podcast."
Yeah, $80 million athletic department. So yeah, you've got one linebacker that's manned up on the running back, and you've got one linebacker that's responsible for that quarterback, and so. Do you have any of those plays from the Mississippi State game in 2017?
Yep.
Yeah. Do you mind throwing those up? So you'll see basically like Roquan in this game, his job is to keep an eye on Nick Fitzgerald, which is basically Mississippi State's entire running game. So if he sees a fake come around, right, and he can tell that Fitzgerald's handing it off to the running back, he's going to break off that assignment and go fill that hole like you saw right there. There's one play in this game where, right here. Yeah. So he fights off that lineman downfield and comes back and makes that play. And I mean, some of these assignments are moving around, right? But basically if you watch, the reason why Georgia was so good on defense in 2017 was a lot of reasons, but like Roquan Smith was so very fast at processing what was happening, reading fakes, knowing, all of a sudden, okay, this running back right there, that's the play. Yeah, go back to that. So on that play, he's responsible for that running back, or I'm sorry, he's responsible for Fitzgerald. And when he sees that running back not take the ball on that fake, he's like, all right, well, I got a wide open lane. I'm going after him. So instead of, maybe a more inexperienced player's like, my job is to spy on the quarterback right now. I'm going to hang back. Roquan had such a high level understanding of the defense that he realized in that moment, like, I can take off and this dude's not going to get away from me and I can light him up. And so I think that's the thing that's really like, how does this translate to when we're watching a football game, right? Like understanding just how much decision-making is really happening for these guys, I think is important. And like Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning and Schumann are asking a lot of these guys, and they're asking them to pay attention to a lot of things, but when it works and these guys understand what's happening, it's hell on wheels to deal with. Like you just don't want to play against it.
And this is like a little, I won't go too much into it, but one side of what you were saying with the decision making, an interesting thing too is when you're saying when it translates to what you see on a game. So the way that Kirby and Lanning do it, which Lanning is just born from Kirby mostly, is like one big divergence that they have from Saban, which everyone acts like Kirby is Saban, which is not exactly true, is the way that they call defensive plays. So Saban is sort of your old school, I'm going to have 1,000 different defensive plays, and that these guys are going to remember and we're going to call, which is one reason, of course, that every defensive coordinator hates hurry up offense, right? But he really hates it because he has a lot of plays. Kirby's and Lanning's is a little bit different. They have, which is kind of a whole different thing, but it goes back to what you're saying with decision making. They're sort of more, they're going to have they have a lot that they can still throw, a ton of stuff. They have a little bit less that they throw at offenses, but they have sort of, for lack of a better term, sort of your main homes, your main bases that these guys know. And then they ask the players from these main bases to sort of, like you're saying, with decision making, rather than this is the play we run, this is the play we run, this is the play we run. And I think that actually ultimately makes you more successful with a fast Oklahoma offense, with something like that, because you don't need, they've perfected, in terms of the best you can, I think, with big guys, how you're going to do a hurry up offense. We don't need every single time them looking to the sideline. They will look to the sideline, but if you watch that, we don't look to the sideline. If you compare it to like Saban, we don't look to the sideline as much. And the reason is, which is a whole different thing, but they really teach these guys, okay, this is what we're going to do when you see this. This is the mode we're in, and base it off of that. Don't look at us every time. We're not going to give you the play based on that, which I think is really interesting. And it's also beautiful to see how that has changed in our defense, that we have a very, not to be punny, smart defense. And Kirby asks a lot of them to know what to do. But I think when we see these Oklahoma and the Texas, which breaking news, Big J journalist Graham has let us know next year, when we see them more, we will be able, the hurry up situation, I think our defense has responded to that very well.
So how much of that, if you're telling me that the players are making decisions on the field and to be in that program, how much of that hurt the development of the guys that came in during COVID and did not have a season? And does that is how, I mean, can a kid come in and start in that capacity and what they require?
I mean, Kobe Dean came in and basically started as a true freshman, right? But he enrolled early and had a spring practice and a fall camp. So, I mean, I do think it takes a kid that's got a high level of processing ability and also, you know, some time. And I think you're very right, Josh. Like, you didn't see a lot of those young linebackers play last year, and that's because unless it was a situation where you could just line them up at the jack position, which is what Aziz played, which is really that kind of fourth guy that's on the end of the line, who's basically his job is almost always to rush the passer. It's just too much to figure out. I mean, most high school programs are not, you know, asking this much of their linebackers, but I think, you know, Sarah was touching on this a little bit. I mean, at one point, Schumann openly admits in this talk, he's like, if we can get our guys lined up, that's like over half the battle. Like, if they're lined up and, you know, they're in a spot where they're ready to go play football when the snap happens, then we've done our job basically. And they've shortened all of their calls to 1 or 2 words. And a lot of times this is abbreviation for an 8, 10, 12 word defensive set. But what's important to note is like these looks that you've been showing and flashing up there. And even if you want to like throw some of that Cincy stuff back up again, those looks, like Georgia can show 6-7 guys up at the line of scrimmage looking like they're blitzing, and they can run cover 3 off of it. They can run cover 2 off of it, or they can blitz off of it. And when they bring these guys up, they blitz pretty infrequently, to be honest. Like they rarely bring more than 4 guys. So a blitz in this system is almost like a trick play. No one expects it to happen, and it confuses the quarterback, and he gets overwhelmed, and that's why they're often successful. So like right here, you know, you've got Nakobe that he comes up the middle there, but that's rare. And he's flushed out of the pocket, and the spy on the quarterback is there to deliver that hit. That's Anderson. You know, his job on that play was to watch Ritter, and once Ritter's off the spot, he goes and blitzes him, and that ball gets out. It's an incompletion. So lots of parts working well together, basically. Do you want to talk about rat coverage and RPO, Sarah?
Sure. So, I mean, basically what I was just going to say about the RPO with Mint, and why I love it and for the RPO, well, it's kind of what I was leaning on before, was the fact that we can basically cover the run with less guys. And so when you take that out, when they know, and one thing I was going to say earlier, we were talking about, which I'm always happy to do, the ode to the 2017 defense and Roquan Smith, which is very true. However, our run defense in 2017 and 2018 compared to 2019, 2020 was actually worse. They've actually improved our run defense. I mean, we were first, both first or second, both years. Nobody at me. Okay, guys, 1 or 2. I don't know, whatever. But so we actually improved that since those. And part of that, I think, is a little bit of the recruiting, but I also think that we've sort of improved that. And so when you take away with a run pass option, right? So if you take away the run, okay, so now you have a pass option, And if, this is a real layman's term to explain it, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Okay, you have a run pass option. If you've taken away the run option, now we have another guy to commit to the pass, because the way that back to what you were saying originally, the reason that the spreads were so great against what we would say is a traditional 4-down defense. By the way, UGA runs a 3-down and a 4-down defense, 4-man down defense. And so don't get confused if you see 4 men, that's not a 4-down defense. That just means 3 linemen, and we have a linebacker that is on the, it will be.
Yeah.
I understand why that's confusing to people, but we run both. But but especially what Kirby is saying is he didn't want to get into a 4-down defense all the time, because what happens, like we were saying earlier, of the spread, there's a bubble of the B gap. So what I'm saying is the reason that they were so dangerous with that is they're going to spread us out, right? Spread. And then you have the can absolutely gut you when in the B gap and so, because all you had basically back there when you ran a traditional, how it was before and how Kirby ran it forward, was you had the overhang player, which was the linebacker who was hanging back. And so that would, you could at least get 5 or 6 yards every play on that. But the way that this handles it is that you've now taken that out and can commit another man. I don't know if that's exactly what you want to say with rat coverage, but that's what I was just saying with the RPA with that.
Yeah. So, with that rat coverage, I think that if you'll flash that little diagram back up there one more time, Josh, it's accounting for the RPO, that front as in general, we've kind of established, right, does a really good job of stopping these modern shotgun kind of run attacks, because it sets edges, it gets people into those B bubbles, so on and so forth. But the other spot that Alabama was getting killed back in 2014, and that a lot of these modern spread offenses will wreck a defense, is crossing routes. So, talking about meshes and slants and these little rub pick routes coming across the middle. And it's tough to cover crossing routes in man coverage, right? That's where you're in a big disadvantage if you're in man. So by dropping this linebacker here, it's they call him the low hole player. So on this play, it's this guy that's set up on the edge, and he's just going to drop back. And if it's a pass play, he's going to be sitting there waiting to pick up on coverage for a guy. He's going to read the quarterback's eyes. He's going to move around kind of depending on what he sees, but it gets rid of that hole there in the middle of the defense. And the other beauty of it is that if it's not a pass play, he can take off and go wherever he wants. He can blitz. He can defend the run. So there's the thing that they talk a lot about in this, and is when you're rushing the quarterback, right? If you can get a matchup of one of your linemen on the opponent's running back, and the running back is the blocker, then you're in really good shape. Or the linebacker is rushing the quarterback and has the running back blocking him. That's a win. You'll take that every time. And so historically in football, especially in 3-4 defenses, you're having to commit 5-6 guys to the rush to try and get somebody freed up, and all of a sudden, they're on that running back and they have the chance to beat that guy and get in there for a sack or a quarterback pressure. Georgia's basically found a way to do that while only rushing 4 guys, and they're not having to blitz 5-6 guys and leave the back end of the defense in a bad spot where if the blitz doesn't get home, all of a sudden, it could be a touchdown. It could be a big play because there's no safety help. There's no linebackers that are there to, pick up and help out with different zone coverages. So it's a really smart way of creating a matchup advantage and getting the matchup that you want without having to give away something that you don't want to give away. I think that's probably kind of the best way to summarize Mint as a whole.
So are we personnel-wise, let's wrapping this up because Clemson's rapidly approaching. This is the defense that it's set up to stop a Clemson and stop, a Florida. Yeah. So, are you confident that we're ready? And what are you expecting? What players are going to jump up and fill some of these holes that have graduated and left the program?
I want to hear from Sarah.
Yeah, I think going from us explaining how much we like this defense to then asking a Georgia fan to like be like me and Graham.
No, be critical.
Yeah.
No, I listen, I'm a fan first. Okay. No, I think actually I would say the beauty of, not to punt on your answer, but I do think the beauty of both the way that Kirby coaches and the system. I just want to say quickly, when we were talking about with COVID and like, you know, how much do these players need to prep and all that stuff, actually in this system and the way that Kirby teaches his defense, you actually, like, for example, UGA will learn half the amount of plays that Alabama has to learn on the first day instead of spring practice. Okay. So the way that he does it is, and I think, and everyone talks about like, you know, what Kirby can do with what kind of players. And that's because he has this type of defense. He teaches the fundamentals. He puts them in. This is a situation in which they can be successful. They don't get mess up. They don't miss a spot. We don't have problems lining up like we used to. And part of that is, I think, you know, when you have young guys that are 18, 19 years old coming out here, and he has a way for them to be successful. You don't have to be a Roquan Smith. And I think we've seen that to be successful in this defense. So I think, to answer your question, not specifically to players, but I feel very confident about that under Kirby's defense, more than defenses we've seen in the past, I don't worry as much about this guy graduated, that guy graduated. Now, Jordan Davis being back is, I mean, it's a game changer. Obviously, that's a game changer. But, you know, and nobody wants to lose good players. But I do think not only do we recruit at a high level, but this system makes it so you don't need the guy that's like the number one, you know, overall pick, even though love to have him.
Was that the football gods thundering on your talking about Nick Saban? Like,
yeah,
I thought I heard some
storm rolling.
Oh, that was
yeah. Yeah, I mean, my opinion, Josh, the Georgia's defensive line will be as good as any defensive line Georgia's ever had at any point in the history of the Georgia football program. And I don't feel like that's a hyperbole or an exaggeration. They're that good. I mean, rewatching that Cincinnati game in preparation for this show, like, actually made me feel a lot better about what we're replacing. Both Nolan Smith and Adam Anderson were in the right places at the right time throughout that game. And they, you know, I think pressures are the best indicator of future sacks, right? And you saw a lot of pressures from those guys, but you also saw them do the right things against the run and dropping into coverage and be in the right places. I think that, you know, you'll see Smith and Anderson kind of occupy those outside linebacker roles, but I also think you'll see Smeal Mondon play in that Jack spot a lot, which Jack is, you know, that Aziz position on the end of the line. And I think you'll see Adam Anderson there on third down basically all the time because he's going to be the pass rush specialist. And I think he's better at defending the run than people think, but I do think, you know, all these guys, you know how Kirby is. He's going to rotate guys all day. But, yeah, up the middle, you've got Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker, who I think are both really smart, athletic football players. Quay Walker's a freak show of an athlete.
Yeah, he's kind of the forgotten guy in this front seven, I think.
Yeah, and he did really well when Monty Rice went out last year, and I think he'll do well this season. So, yeah, the big question – I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you have a defense and a defensive line in which you're like, you forget about Quay Walker, I think you're going to be doing very well.
And people forget about Devontae Wyatt as well. And he led the team in hurries and tackles for loss. I mean, like, he was a monster on the inside. I mean, like, Jalen Carter is not going to start as one of the 3-down linemen. Think about that for a second. And it's not because he's not really good. It's just because there's going to be 3 other dudes out there that are really, really good in their own right. So Georgia will have waves of guys to rush the passer. They will have good linebackers. The real question is just like, you know, Tyke coming in at star is going to be awesome. We know our boy Chris Smith has got the back end lockdown with Lewis Cine. So really it's just a question of who's that last defensive back. I don't know who it will be, but I think that Georgia has enough good athletes on the team that someone will fill that role perfectly fine. So, yeah, I feel good. I think, you know, it'll be a challenge playing Clemson because Uiagalelei is a very good rushing quarterback, and he has a very good arm, and he does everything very, very well. But Georgia has done really well historically when playing quarterbacks that like to leave the pocket.
I was about to say that.
So
Everyone thought there was no way that we were going to be able to keep contained with Baker, and his legs and the second half were absolutely not a part of the game. So I think, I think
and that's another. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying, I think that's a good, like, if people want to go back and like understand what we're talking about, that's what we mean. The way that this sets up, it actually really does contain, you're not betting on what they're going to do. You're prepared for everything that they're going to do. You're not having to bet. You're not putting all your chips forward like a Todd and Grantham, or Third and Grantham. I like a Todd and Grantham better. I'm going with that. And
Sounds
so
like a shitty cocktail.
Well, there you go. So,
all right.
No, yeah, I think though that the last thing I'll add to this is just, another reason why Smart switched to this front was because they did a study and realized that quarterbacks who were running for first downs against them, I think like something astronomical, like 87% of the time, those first downs were coming by them taking lanes up the middle. And so if they flush DJ and he comes around the edge and it's him versus Tyke or Adam Anderson or one of those linebackers to the corner, like if he wins that matchup, he wins that matchup. You know what I mean? But like
he's not going to get 3 yards. Yeah.
Right. You'll take your defense in that situation most of the time because you're talking about all those guys that are running, 4-5 or better. They're probably going to be able to get to the sideline and, keep him from coming off the edge and breaking a long run for a touchdown or something. And so it's going to be a fascinating game, really. But I think the biggest question really is, will Clemson's defense be able to steal Georgia's signals? Because if they don't, they'll be standing around waiting for a call like they were against Ohio State.
Shots fired. I like it. All right, so we're wrapping this up. You guys are awesome. We just went 40 minutes on friggin' defense, and I know that Graham has always wanted to talk about more defense on the show. So Sarah, thank you. You've actually brought
thank you, Sarah.
Great insight. And Sarah's probably going to be doing some more stuff for Dog Sports this year. Can we say that? All right. Yeah. So she's going to be doing this. So she's funny, snarky, and knows her about football. So thank you for joining us. Please subscribe to us on YouTube and on Apple Podcasts. Leave reviews for us. If you want to go back and watch some of our other shows, we actually broke down the front 7 going into the G-Day game and talked about a lot of these players, and you can see some of their plays and snaps. He's Graham Coffey and writes for dogsports.com, and he's at Dog Out West. Sarah is soon to be writing for dogsports.com, and she's at Sarah G1561. I am Josh at dog_stats on the Twitter. Graham, take us out.
I mean, you said it all, but thank you guys for joining us. Please like and subscribe the Dog Sports Live channel on YouTube. Please follow us at dogsports_live on Twitter. Please find us on Apple and Spotify podcasts. Follow, subscribe.
Yeah. Follow Graham.
Give us a 5-star rating. We'll do something. We'll send you a sticker. We'll send you an FTMF sticker if you give us a 5-star rating.
If I get 600 followers by tomorrow, I will get Josh to send you guys a sticker.
Wait. That's not how that works.
You guys are awesome. And stick with us, man. We're in the season mode, and we're gonna have more stuff coming up. We're gonna break down the SEC, and we're probably gonna have some more announcements and stuff. So, thank you guys for watching, and go Dogs.
Go Dogs.